So these are live shots from Minneapolis this afternoon. We just saw the arrest of a couple of these protesters taken away by ICE agents. Yesterday's deadly shooting of a woman by an ICE officer took place less than a mile from where the George Floyd incident began to unfold, and it obviously led to a tragedy and a lot of unrest in Minneapolis. Investigators say that the FBI is taking over this investigation. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the shooting was self-defense. Some Democrats are calling it a crime. Watch.
This officer not only needs to be fired and suspended, he needs to be charged with murder.
That ICE officer needs to be arrested and he needs to be put on trial. That was an excessive use of force.
Murders in cold blood need to be prosecuted. What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head.
Joining me now, former Attorney General Bill Barr. General Barr, great to have you with us. Thank you for joining me. You know, what goes through your mind when you listen to these lawmakers who, you know, on the one hand say, let's wait for the investigation, on the other hand, call the ICE agent a murderer?
Well, obviously, you know, it's part of the rhetoric, overheated rhetoric that's contributing to these kinds of situations. Look, it's very sad when there's a loss of life like this, and it's, you know, I pray for the family and the loved ones of this young woman, but this will be thoroughly investigated by the FBI. The Department of Justice reviews anytime there's a police shooting or law enforcement shooting. This is a matter of federal law because this is an agent that was operating within his employment and his scope of duties as a federal officer, and the law that applies to him is whether or not his acts were authorized under federal law and the federal rules applicable to him. So this will be fully investigated. I've been involved in many of these as Attorney General, reviewing them. I've reviewed a lot of automobile cases where people are driving and are shot while they're driving toward police officers. You know, I wouldn't prejudge this. I'd like to know all the facts, but I did watch the video, and it seems to me that the car was definitely moving right toward an officer who was standing immediately in front of the car. And while the officer was able to get out of the way, the officer doesn't have to get out of the way. She was driving his car to him, and it appeared to me he probably had about within a second, to make up his mind and to act. And you know, I think my expectation would be, based on the cases I've seen before, that the Civil Rights Division will probably find that this was a legitimate self-defense, but we'll have to wait until the investigation is over.
Is it relevant to the case that he was dragged by a vehicle months before? Does that inform anything about his reaction in this case?
Yeah, I think, you know, the standard is not what these people on the sidelines in cold blood decide think. It's what a reasonable police officer with his experience and in the surrounding environment and under the circumstances he's been confronting, what his reactions would be. And you have to remember that decisions are made as to whether or not your life is being threatened and to react. Sometimes there's a second or two or more before you end up shooting the gun. So, the experts are going to look over this. They will have all the video, frame by frame, and the soundtrack, and they'll build models and so forth, and they'll make a judgment. But the standard is whether the police officer reasonably feared for his life. And in a case where they're right in front of the vehicle and the vehicle is moving at a pretty decent clip toward him, and in fact, seems to skirt him very closely or in fact touch him when he tried to get out of the way. The cases I've seen in the past on this, as I say, I would expect them to say this was self-defense.
I want to squeeze in two more quick questions here. This is Governor Walz, who has a very different take on who should be handling this investigation. I want to get your reaction to this. Watch.
We believe in states' rights. We believe the federal government needs to stay out of this. We believe that the situation has gotten worse and less safe because of their presence.
and the mayor says they want ICE to get out of, in very colorful language, to get out of Minneapolis. Do they have the right to take over this investigation or to force ICE out of the city or the state?
Not at all. The law that is being enforced is federal law, immigration law, federal law. And the question at issue is whether this officer acted within his federal authority, and that's a decision that can only be reached by the federal government. And if he was acting within his federal authority, the state cannot prosecute him under state law, under the Supremacy Clause. But, I think this adds to the, I think we should pause. This tragic event should give us some pause and reflect on how the tactics and rhetoric of the left are contributing to creating an atmosphere that makes a difficult job much more dangerous than it has to be. The interference, the mobbing of these officers, the demonization of them, the encouragement for people to resist arrest, and something that was mentioned earlier in your show, the fact that you have these sanctuary areas that don't help the federal government. They don't cooperate. They don't provide them information. And when they're operating in a city and they don't get local information from local law enforcement, they don't know what they're going to confront. And I'm not necessarily talking about this particular episode, but when they're going in to arrest someone, it would be nice to have the latest information, data, and support of local law enforcement.
And
So
we
they're
see that it works very
creating
differently in places that do cooperate. Before I let you go, just a quick thought on where we are with Venezuela. I know you've been interviewed on Fox about the abduction of Maduro, but I'm curious what you think about, the oil issue and the president saying that we're going to be there for some time with regard to oil transactions and control.
Yes. Well, first, I wouldn't say it's an abduction. I think it was an arrest. But on the oil,
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's critical. It's critical that we protect the oil and those oil fields and get them operating to the well-being and future prosperity of the Venezuelans, who used to be the wealthiest people in South America. And then after 20 years of the loving embrace of collectivism, have become, eat food out of garbage bins. So we can help restore prosperity, but it takes operating those wells. And that has to be done by experienced, competent American operators.
Thank you very much, General Barr. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Martha.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.